Hello everybody and welcome back. I am the Monitor of Dragons and today I'm going to be talking about that other discussion video that I said I was going to be doing. Now if you watched my latest update video, then you would know that in the video I said I would be doing another discussion video, but that this would be the last one for a while. And this mostly because I am not all that good when it comes to discussion / rant videos, so to speak. I am more of a Let's Play channel, and that's more of what I want to be. But in order to, continue on with this channel, I need to talk about some things that have recently emerged from the Bionicle community, which I bet you don't know that I'm a part of, but I am. I have been a fan of Bionicles. I have even built my own mocks. I am deeply invested into the series and the story as a whole. I love it. And to hear this news kind of breaks my heart. So if you've been in the Bionicle news lately, then you would know of this major event happening. That the Generation 2 of Bionicle, the second generation, has been canned. Fans, today we are here to share with you that we have made the tough decision to discontinue LEGO Bionicle at the end of 2016. Netflix has just started streaming the final 2 episodes of The Journey to One, the ending of which will put an end to any speculation about the future of Bionicle. So, as LEGO puts it, Bionicle Generation 2 has officially ended. It was to them, I guess, a tough choice, but they ultimately did it. But this left a lot of questions in the community, the most important of which being, why? Why was this generation cancelled? Why was Bionicle given a second chance only to be cancelled 2 years later? Was it because of sales? In terms of that question, you may think it was sales. I mean, Hero Factory didn't do that well, so that must mean that if Bionicle Generation 2 was cancelled in that short of time, the sales must have been horrendous. In answer to that, no. If we look over to LEGO's responses on Twitter, we can see this message. And the question was the discontinuation of Bionicle attributed to a lack of product sales? Most would assume that this would be the answer. I mean, if it was pulled off of the story that quickly, if it was cancelled this quickly, then it must have sold bad, right? Nope. To quote LEGO, overall, the LEGO Bionicle products have been successful. We hope this helps answer your question. So, as LEGO puts it, no, the LEGO Bionicle products have actually been successful. Really decent. So, if it wasn't the sales themselves, then what was it? What caused the death of Bionicle Generation 2? I believe the answer lies somewhere in the management of the second generation, but I'll bring this point throughout the entire video. But for now, I want to go away from that point and instead bring up something that brings me into the matter. My involvement with Bionicle as a whole. My tie to the series as a fan. And in order to figure out my stance on the situation, you need to figure out my overall opinion on it. Where do I come from? So, I'm going to tell you that. In terms of where I stand on the series, I grew up around the time Bionicle was starting to come out, in the 2000s, but I mostly got into the series in the late 2000s, around the Glatorian era, so 2008, 2009, and 2010. And while I did get in the later years, I still enjoyed it. It was a very enjoyable line, but I didn't buy it all that much. I was more interested in the system side, the builds, the LEGO bricks themselves. Things like Exoforce and all those other lines were what I was mostly interested in at the time. But even then, I still built with Bionicles, and it was pretty fun. Though little did I know that shortly after Galatorian that Bionicle Generation 1 would be put to sleep, that the Stars line would be the finale. And even though Stars is commonly deemed as the worst of the line, I still had fun with it. I still have many fond memories of playing with the Galatorians and Tahu and the Stars. But I just didn't know what was happening at the time. Before I knew it, Bionicle wasn't on shelves anymore, instead replaced by this Hero Factory. I didn't know any better at the time. I thought it was a continuation of Bionicle or some sort of successor. In the second listing, it kind of is a successor, just not the same. But it was only until Bionicle was cancelled where I really got into the series. I began searching up Bionicle. I began searching on eBay more and more. I began even looking at the Bionicle Wikia to learn more information about the series, the characters, the sets as a whole. And I was deeply invested. I didn't know that such a set series like this had such an engaging and deep and interesting story and characters. It was something I never knew about and just made me more and more interested. It made me actually want to go out and get the sets, whether through eBay, Amazon, or something else. It got me more invested in the series. It made me more involved in the franchise as a whole. But something I bet you want to know about me is my stance on Hero Factory. And I'll just say this right now. I thought it was meh. Just not good, not bad. It's somewhere in between. I thought it was a decent appetizer for what was to come. And that's how I think of Hero Factory when it comes to Bionicle. An appetizer. And if you really think about it, that's how it is. Hero Factory was simply to tide us over before Bionicle made its big comeback. And that's how I felt it was. The story was the worst part, arguably the worst part of the entire Hero Factory line. And I think everybody can agree on me with this. The story just seemed to be a mess of unconcentrated points, some key plot elements that were missed out, development that could be used. And yet we got a bland, uninteresting, and a story that just doesn't stand out. It was especially noticeable in the final wave of Hero Factory, The Beast from Below, whatever it's called. Instead of being a direct continuation, or a, say, prequel of Hero Factory, guess what it is? A reboot, or to say the least, an alternate continuation of Hero Factory, an alternate universe, with Lego-sized versions of the actual characters and Bionicle-sized versions of mechs and monsters. And this was strange to me. But hey, it was interesting of a concept, so to speak. But I felt that this was really where Hero Factory went downhill. And I mean, not to say that I was a big fan of it, but overall, the line had potential. It just didn't stack up to that. And to anybody thinking that Hero Factory may have ended Bionicle, no. Hero Factory did not end Bionicle. Even with, say, Hero Factory creating some bad stigma around the CCBS building system as a whole, as stated before, Lego Bionicle Generation 2 have been successful, and from this we can interpret that it has been more successful than Hero Factory, because during Hero Factory's lineups and releases, they would sometimes not even have sets, Titans, not even released. They would still have old generation Titans still in stores and old sets. So to that question, no. Bionicle or Hero Factory did not end Bionicle. But I guess I might as well get on to the main point of this video. Bionicle Generation 2 and its rushed status as a whole. How it personally felt rushed to me, and how it felt rushed to the entire community as a whole. So, let's start from the beginning. In 2014, leaks were revealed to the world. The news was revealed that everyone's favorite Toa-themed story, Lego-themed story, would finally be brought back to a newer, younger generation, to be reintroduced to everybody, to the kids of this generation. It finally brought hope, reignited the spark in the Bionicle community. It was exactly what we needed in these dark times. And while it was brought around, it was only brought around for 2 whole years. And I'll be honest when I say this, Generation 2 as a whole felt rushed. The sets were good, the storyline had potential, but it was rushed. It felt like as if Lego was pushing out these Bionicle products just to get more sales out of it, just to get more nostalgia out of it. And I'll start from there. Bionicle's commercial use of Bionicle. And this is kind of a major point of contention. How did Bionicle not sell as well as intended? We knew it would have sold better, but why didn't it? Simple. Commercial use. Rarely did I ever see a Bionicle commercial on television. Only rarely would I see it. And even then, it wouldn't pique my interest at all. Which was even worse in the summer season or summer wave of season 1 of Bionicle Generation 2, which only had commercials from time to time on the computer, on the internet, rarely on TV. And while you may say that the internet is a big part of people's lives nowadays, just having the commercial use be on only computer does not help. If you want to commercialize, and if you want to introduce this brand, this series to people, you have to use everything at your disposal. You can't just use simply one factor and just leave it at that. You have to use everything. Oftentimes nowadays, series will use both TV and internet commercialization in order to get a good product. And Lego has done this before. They have done this before. Even in the original Bionicle Generation 1, they did this with the commercials on TV, and they did this with the Monog online games. And that's why Bionicle sold well. It clicked with a lot of people. But Bionicle Generation 2 just didn't do that. It didn't click with the generation of kids nowadays, which is really sad when you think about it. Knowing that kids nowadays will only think of Bionicle as that one line that didn't sell as well as others, that one line that is no longer in stores. Lego kids nowadays only buy Ninjago, which I can understand them liking it. But it's kind of Lego's fault that we didn't buy Bionicle. They didn't give us an interest in Bionicle. They didn't give us a reason to buy it, both in commercial and story use. Which I might as well get on to the next point, the story. Oh boy, where do I begin? Look, I understand why the story has to be simplified. And to be honest, that's one of the main reasons as to why Bionicle Generation 1 might have ended, due to how big it felt. If you were a kid who grew up around 2006, 2007, you wouldn't understand everything. Sure, you understand some concepts and story and plot lines, but that's it. Only some. You wouldn't get the full experience. You wouldn't understand everything as a kid growing up in that age and era. You wouldn't understand what's going on. And that kind of made it hard for kids to get into Bionicle in the later years, due to how expansive the universe was. And while that is good for older fans to learn and know more, sometimes having it too big isn't good enough for the kids. But having it too simplified isn't also good for the kids. While the story was simplified, and I can note that simplified stories can help, it didn't work with this. The story felt too simplified. It didn't have the feel that Bionicle Generation 1 was. And I know that Bionicle Generation 2 will never match up to Generation 1, and that's kind of what I expected. But I expected them to put a little bit more effort into the story than this. We have cookie cutter characters, cookie cutter villains, and a cookie cutter storyline, with maybe some sprinkles and dusts of underlying themes and messages. But that's just it. Just sprinkles of it. If Ninjago can achieve half of what Bionicle Generation 1 can do, then it's safe to say that Generation 2 can do just as much, if not more than Ninjago. But it didn't. They just kept to a simplified story in order to draw in kids. And while that is good to draw in kids with a simplified story, kids need to think nowadays. Kids need to think about things, need to think about messages, think about the storyline, create their own solutions. And that's kind of what televisions nowadays are doing. Shows like Steven Universe and Gravity Falls have made people think, have made kids smarter. And it's not just because for the sake of it, it's actually to get the kids and audience more invested into the series as a whole. And that's what Bionicle did. And that's what Generation could have done. 2 could have done. But it didn't. While I'm on the story, I might as well bring up the Journey to 1 animated series, or as many people like to call it, the Journey to Done. I'll bring this up right now. I felt that it was a rush. Like the rest of Generation 2, it felt rushed. Especially in the final episodes of Journey to 1. And this is another point where marketing comes in. There could have been a animated series around the time that Bionicle Season 1 came out, but there wasn't. The LEGO team waited until the second season of Bionicle to make an animated series, which will, I guess, kind of work since you had an animated shorts for the Season 1. It just doesn't cut out. In my honest opinion, they did the animated season way too late. They did too late in the series' lifespan and the expectations of the audience. They did it too late and they couldn't fix it. In terms of the actual story of the Journey to 1, it's simple. I mean, you've got the villain, Umrak the Hunter, serving Makuta in an attempt to get Makuta's mask of control back, to resurrect his master. Okay, you can do a lot with this theme. You can do a lot with this plotline. You can do so much. I wish it was that simple. In my honest opinions, this whole series felt a disappointment. And it's shown in the Journey to 1. I mean, heck, you can even see in the first few episodes. I mean, look at the series as a whole. It only has a prologue and 4 episodes worth of 2 seasons. That's not long. That's not what you need for a series. And while you may say, oh, it's a mini-series, so it doesn't count. No. A series needs a length and width to survive. It needs content. And having 4 episodes just for a specific series isn't enough. You can do a lot more with more episodes, and even longer episodes for this matter. You can delve into characters, you can create character development, develop the world around you, and characters as a whole. Also, sorry for the plane if you can hear it. But they didn't. And I felt Umrak the Hunter was one of the most biggest disappointments in the series. They could have developed his story. They could have made him more interesting. I mean, think about it. A character from the shadows who was born specifically to hunt the elemental creatures and drain them of their elemental powers. That's a good character basis. And it could have been developed more. They could have made him an interesting and maybe even a tragic character. Especially in the Destroyer stage, where he is tortured by the Mask of Control, mutated and controlled as a pawn. They could have made him a tragic character. They could have developed him. But they stuck to him being a cookie-cutter character. A villain. A generic, one-dimensional villain. While I'm at it, I might as well bring up the ending of the Journey to One. Now, this is going to be where I'm going to be delving into spoiler territory. So if you've not finished or caught up to the series, I suggest you go to the time listed on the screen right now to avoid spoilers. That way, the experience will not be ruined for you. So, I'm going to be listing spoilers in 3, 2, 1. If you were to ask me what my biggest disappointment for the entire Generation 2 as a whole was, it would definitely have to be the main villain, Makuta. Here he is, built up through all this concept art, all this story, all these images, and finally, he's brought into the Journey of One as a last note character. In the final episode, no less. When you first see him, you think, oh, he looks cool, they could definitely do something with this. But then you note, it's the last episode. Okay, that kind of gets you a bit worried. But hey, they could do some big grand final battle with the Toa. Something on a scale, or at least half the scale of the Takanuva battle. They could do something like that, and they could have it be epic, and finally conclude the series in a worthy and epic note. They didn't. They just had a simple power beam struggle with the Toa and Makuta, and that's it. The Toa just screw off back to their own home planets or wherever they came from. Makuta is sealed back into his prison, and that's it. That's it. We don't even get to see Makuta in the Yokoten realm. Sure, we get a good look at it, but that's what disappoints me. We get a good design for a menacing, villainous character. We finally get to see what it looks like, and it builds up to the hype. And yet, we don't get anything. We don't get to see him fight the Toa. We don't get to see any epic battle. We only see him once, and that's it. Can anyone say big-lipped alligator moment for me? Because that definitely was a moment. And oh my gosh. They could have at least created one final set this year or even next year featuring Makuta as this one big, massive titan, even maybe larger than Umrak the Destroyer, more imposing, more powerful, and comes with the mask of ultimate power. They could have done this, but they didn't. Alright, spoilers are over. You can come back. In all honesty, I am disappointed at LEGO, at Bionicle, and Generation 2 as a whole. They could have done more. In fact, they've shown they could do more. From all the concept art and images we revealed in Bionicle Generation 2's run, there's a lot of concept art and images that could have been used. Some storylines and plot. But they were never used. They are just built up for the hype machine and never used again. LEGO, if you're watching this, even if it's a highly unlikely possibility, I want you to know that you disappointed us. This could have been your big chance to ignite the fire, to reignite the spark with the younger kids of this generation. That you could have used all this to its maximum potential. You could have had a 10 episode, even a 15 episode series if you had just taken it with care. But you didn't. If you want to know how to market a series correctly, look no further than Generation 2 of Bionicle. Not only was it marketed poorly, but the story as a whole was rushed. Everything about it was rushed. But that just leaves one question. What do we do now? What do we do now that Bionicle has ended? And to be honest, I don't know. If you want to know a better explanation than me, go watch the TTV podcast or the TTV channel. They have a better message than me, and they're probably going to deliver it better than me. So just link in the description below for their channel. But I honestly don't know what to do. But my best guess for what to do is to just continue on. We've been through Bionicle's cancellation before. We've dealt through this before. And back then, our answer was, we'll make LEGO care about us by showing us, by making us care about it. We will show them that we truly care about this franchise, and that's what people did, and sure enough, it brought it back. But I don't think that will help this time. Back then, Bionicle was just simply put to sleep. But now, I truly feel it will never rise up again. This is the last and only time that Bionicle will ever come back. And it's truly sad. So, in terms of what you guys can do to preserve the legacy, I don't know. Do whatever you want. You can build mocks, you can create stories. Do whatever you want, and that's my main message to you. Do not just think that it's over, that Bionicle is dead. Do not think like that. For Bionicle, or even a franchise, is never dead, unless if everyone stops caring about it. And in this case, nobody is going to stop caring about Bionicle. Sure, some people may have stopped caring about it a long time ago, but the rest of us haven't stopped caring about it. We will continue preserving the legacy of Bionicle. We will continue creating custom-made mocks, stories, and creating our own interesting storylines. This is about the mockists. This is about the story creators. This is about the people and fans who are invested in Bionicle as a whole. This is how you preserve the legacy. This is how you preserve a generation to another generation. And to be honest, this is all I could feel that how we could tell younger kids nowadays about our generation, by introducing them into the mocks and stories that we have created thanks to this series. We don't need to show LEGO that we still care. We just need to preserve the legacy. That's all. And so long as we preserve the flame, so long as we preserve the legacy, Bionicle will never die. So you know what I'm going to do? I will never stop building Bionicle mocks. I will never stop thinking of storylines, my characters, and for my creations that I built. I will never stop. And this will be used to teach the kids of this generation a lesson. This will be used to teach the kids of this generation that once upon a time, Bionicle was great. It was fantastic. And that if we all band together, that if we all do what's in our hearts and do what we think will benefit Bionicle the best, then Bionicle will never truly die. If you want to know a more condensed and focused opinion on Bionicle, then I suggest you check up on Nicole Aqua Magna's video on this subject. for I 100% guarantee that he does this video better than I will ever do. If you want to know some more developed opinions about how I feel about Generation 2 and Bionicle as a whole, and how it could have been handled better, go check out his video. A link to his channel will be in the description below, and I will link his video there. Anyway, that is all I have to say. I needed to get this on my chest, and I felt that it was important to bring up. So I thank you guys for watching, and even the smallest of comments, even the smallest of likes, will appreciate a lot. I thank you guys for watching. This is the Monarch of Dragons, and remember, Bionicle will never truly die so long as we keep the spark alive.